Are you ready? Ready to start our second book and book club, of course. You're so silly, I swear. Well, if you would have read your email, don't worry, I'm bad with emails too. You would have seen what book we were supposed to read. Is this gonna be like last time where you forget the book every time and I have to read it to you? Oh my gosh. I swear. You're so forgetful. Well, this is called Magic Bites. The wonderful Alaska Murphy, aka Amy, sent me this book and I just thought, why don't we read it together? I believe she said this was her favorite book. So we will find out if the hype is real. It even has bonus material. It's by, if I mispronounced this, I'm so sorry, Ilona, one of those, I think, Andrews. She looks like a badass character. Alright. Should we get started? I thought so. Whoop. I made a little bookmark. It says this side. I'm just gonna use a restaurant card this time. For my daughters Anastasia and Helen. I find that so interesting. Anastasia is such like an interesting name, exotic kind of. And Helen is just like one of those like kind of plain Jane, no offense, Helen's out there. But like, back in the day names. Are you ready? Steady. Go eat. I sat at a table in my shadowy kitchen, staring down a bottle of Boone's Farm Hard lemonade, when a magic fluctuation hit. My wards shivered and died, leaving my home stripped of its defenses. The TV flared into life unnaturally loud in the empty house. I raised my eyebrow at the bottle and I bet it that another urgent bulletin was on. The bottle lost. Urgent bulletin! Margaret Chang announced. The Attorney General advises all citizens that any attempt at summoning or other activities resulting in the appearance of a supernaturally powerful being can be hazardous to yourself and to other citizens. No shit, I told the bottle. Local police have been authorized to subdue any such activities with all due force. Margaret droned on, while I bit into my sandwich. Who are they kidding? No police force could hope to squash every summoning. It took a qualified wizard to detect a summoning in progress. It required only a half-literate idiot with a twitch of power and a dim idea of how to use it to attempt one. Before you knew it, a three-headed Slavonic god was wreaking havoc in downtown Atlanta. The skies were raining winged snakes, and SWAT was screaming for more ammo. These were unsafe times, but then in safer times, I'd be a woman without a job. The safe tech world had a little use for a magic-touting mercenary like me. When people had trouble of a magic kind, the kind that cops couldn't or wouldn't handle, they called the mercenary guild. If the job happened to fall into my territory, the guild then called me. I grimaced and rubbed my hip. It still ached after the last job, but the wound had healed better than I expected. That was the first time and last time I would agree to go against the Impala worm without full body armor. The next time, they better furnish me with a level 4 containment suit. An icy wave of fear and revulsion hit me. My stomach lurched, sending acid to coat the root of my tongue with a bitter aftertaste. Shivers ran along my spine, and the tiny hairs on my neck stood on end. Something bad was in the house. I put down my sandwich and hit the mute button on the remote control. On the screen, Margaret Chang was joined by a brick-faced man with a high and tight haircut and eyes like slate. A cop. On the green screen, Margaret Chang was... Oh, my bad. Probably Paranormal Activity Division. I put my hand on the dagger that rested on my lap and sat very still, listening, waiting. No sound troubled the silence. A drop of water formed on the sweaty surface of the Boone's Farm bottle and slid down its glistening side. Something large crawled along the hallway ceiling into the kitchen. I pretended not to see it. It stopped to the left of me and slightly behind, so I didn't have to pretend very hard. The intruder hesitated, turned, and anchored itself in the corner where the ceiling met the wall. It sat there, fastened to the paneling by enormous yellow talons, still and silent, like a gargoyle in full sunlight. I took a swig from the bottle and set it so I could see the creature's reflection. Nude and hairless, it didn't carry a single ounce of fat on its lean frame. Its skin stretched so tight over the hard cords of muscle it threatened to snap, like a thin layer of wax melted over an anatomy model. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. The vampire raised its left hand. The dagger talons sliced the empty air back and forth like curved knitting needles. The vamp turned its head dog-like and studied me with eyes luminescent with a particular kind of madness, born of bestial bloodthirst and free of any thought or restraint. In a single motion, I whipped around and hurled the dagger. The black blade sliced cleanly into the creature's throat. The vampire froze. Its yellow claws stopped moving. Thick, purplish blood swelled around the blade and staining its chest and dripping on the floor. The vampire's features twisted, trying to morph into a different face. It opened its maw, displaying twin fangs curved like a miniature's ivory sickles. "That was extremely inconsiderate, Kate," Gastek's voice said from the vampire's throat. "Now I have to feed him." It's a reflex. Hear a bell, get food, see an undead, throw a knife. Same thing, really. Vampire's face strict as if the master of dead controlling it tried to squint. "What are you drinking?" Gastek asked. "Boone's Farm." "You can afford better." "I don't want better. I like Boone's Farm and I prefer to do business by phone, and with you, not at all." "I don't wish to hire you, Kate. This is merely a social call." I stared at the vampire, wishing I could put my knife into Gastek's throat. It would feel very good cutting into his flesh. Unfortunately, he sat in an armored room many miles away. "You enjoy screwing with me, don't you, Gastek?" "Immensely." The million-dollar question was why. "What is it you want? Make it quick. My Boone Farms is getting warm." "I was just wondering," Gastek said with a dry neutrality particularly only to him. "When was the last time you saw your guardian?" The nonchalance in his voice sent tiny shivers down my spine. "Why, no reason. As always, a pleasure." In a single powerful leap, the vampire detached itself from the wall and flew through the open window, taking my knife with it. I reached for the phone, swearing under my breath, and dialed the Order of Knights of Merciful Aid. No vampire could breach my wards when the magic was in full swing. Gastek had no way of knowing when the magic would ebb, so he must have been watching my house for some time, waiting for my defensive spells to fail. I took a swig from the bottle. That meant a vamp had been hiding someplace close when I came home last night, and I didn't see it or feel it. How reassuring. might just as well write alerts RS on my Merc ID. 1 ring. 2. 3. Why would he ask me about Greg? The phone clicked and a stern female voice delivered a practiced blurb. Atlanta, chapter of the Order. How may I help you? I'd like to speak to Greg Feldman. Your name? A faint note of anxiety pulsing through her voice. I don't have to give you my name, I said into the receiver. I wish to speak to the Night Diviner. A pause issued into my voice. Please identify yourself. They were stalling, probably trying to trace the call. What the hell was going on? No, I said firmly. Page 7 of your charter, 3rd paragraph down. Any citizen has a right to seek counsel of a Night Diviner without fear of retribution or need for identification. As a citizen, I insist that you put me in contact with the Night Diviner now, or specify the time he can be reached. The Night Diviner is dead, the voice said. The world halted. I skidded through its stillness, frightened and off balance. My throat ached. I heard my heart beating in my chest. How? My voice was calm. He was killed in the line of duty. Who did it? The matter is still under investigation. Look, if I could just get your name. I pushed the disconnect button and lowered the receiver in its place. I looked at the empty chairs across from me. 2 weeks ago, Greg had sat in this chair, stirring his coffee. His spoon had made small, precise circles, never touching the sides of the mug. For a moment, I could actually see him right there. While the memory played in my mind, Greg was looking at me with dark brown eyes, mournful like the eyes of an icon. Please, Kate, suspend your dislike for me for a few moments and listen to what I have to say. It makes sense. I don't dislike you. It's an oversimplification. He nodded, wearing that very patient expression that drove women mad. Of course. I didn't intend to slight or simplify your feelings. I merely wish us to concentrate on the substance of what I say. Could you please listen? I leaned back and crossed my arms. I'm listening. He reached inside his leather jacket and produced a rolled-up scroll. He placed the scroll on the table and unrolled it slowly, holding it taut with the tips of his fingers. This is the invitation from the Order. I threw my hands in the air. That's it. I'm done. Allow me to finish, he said. He didn't look angry. He didn't tell me that I was acting like a child, although I knew that I was. It made me madder. Very well, I said. In a few weeks, you'll turn 25. While in itself that means very little in terms of readmission into the Order, it carries a certain weight. It's much harder to gain entrance once you've turned 25. Not impossible, just harder. I know. They've sent me brochures. He let go of the scroll and leaned back, lacing his long fingers. The scroll remained open, even though every law of physics dictated that it should snap back into a roll. Greg forgot about physics sometimes. In that case, you're aware of age penalties. It wasn't a question, but I answered it anyways. Yes. He sighed. It was a small movement, only noticeable to those who knew him well. I could tell by the way he sat, very still, craning his neck slightly, that he had guessed at my decision. I wish you would reconsider, he said. I don't think so. For a moment I could see the frustration in his eyes. We both knew what was left unsaid. The Order promised protection, and protection to someone of my lineage was paramount. Can I ask why? He said. It's not for me, Greg. I can't deal with hierarchy. For him, the Order was a place of refuge and security, a place of power. Its members committed themselves to the values of the Order completely, serving with such dedication that the organization itself no longer seemed a gathering of individuals, but an entity in itself, thinking, rationalizing, and incredibly powerful. Every moment I spent there, I felt as if there was less of me. I said, as if I was shrinking, dwindling away. I have to get out, and I won't go back. Greg looked at me, his dark eyes terribly sad. In this dim light, in my small kitchen, his beauty was startling. In some perverse way, I was happy that my stubbornness forced him to visit, and now he sat in a chair less than a foot away, like an ageless elven prince, elegant and sorrowful. God, how much I hated myself for this little girl fantasy. "If you'll excuse me," I said. He blinked, startled by my formality, and rose smoothly. "Of course. Thank you for the coffee." Saw him to the door. Then outside had turned dark, and the bright light of the moon enameled the grass on my lawn with silver. By the porch, white rows of Sharon flowers glowed against the shrubs like a scattering of stars. I watched Greg descend down the 3 concrete steps into the yard. "Greg?" "Yes." He turned. His magic flared about him like a mantle. "Nothing." I closed the door. My last memory of him poised against the moonlight drenched the lawn and clothed in his magic. Oh, God. I cradled myself with my arms, wanting to cry. The tears would not come. My mouth had gone dry. My last link to my family severed. Nobody was left. I had no mother, no father, and no Greg. I clenched my teeth and went to pack. Are you ready for chapter 2? Good. The magic hit while I was packing the essentials into my bag, and I had to take Carmelian instead of my regular car. A beat-up, rusted truck, bile green in color, and missing the left headlight assembly. Carmelian had only one advantage. It ran on water infused with magic and could be driven during a magic wave. Unlike normal cars, the truck did not rumble or murmur or produce any sound one would expect an engine to make. Instead, it growled, whined, snarled, and emitted deafening peals of thunder with depressing regularity. Who named it Carmelian and why? I had no idea. I bought it at a junkyard with the name scrawled on the windshield. Lucky for me, on a regular day, Carmelian had to travel only 30 miles to Savannah. Today I forced it into the ley line, which in itself wasn't bad for it, since the ley line dragged it almost all the way to Atlanta. But the trek across the city didn't do it much good. Now the truck was cooling off in the parking lot behind me. Dripping water and sweating magic, it would take me a good 15 minutes to warm the generator back up. But that was all right. I planned to be here for a while. I hated Atlanta. I hated cities, period. I stood on the sidewalk and surveyed the small, shabby office building that supposedly contained the Atlanta chapter of the Order of the Knights of Merciful Aid. The order made efforts to conceal its true size and power, but in this case they had gone overboard. The buildings, a concrete box 3 stories high, stuck out like a sore thumb. Among the stately brick houses flanking it on both sides, the walls sported orange rust stains made by rainwater, dripping from the metal roof, though the holes in the gutters, thick metal grates secured with small windows, blocked by pale Venetian blinds behind dusty glass. There had to be another facility in the city, a place where the support staff worked while the field agents put on a nice modest front for the public. It would have a large state-of-art armory, and a computer network and a database of files on anyone of power, magic, or mundane. Somewhere in the database, my name sat in its very own little niche, the name of a reject, undisciplined and worthless, just the way I like it. I touched the wall, about a quarter of an inch away from the concrete. My finger encountered elastic resistance as if I was trying to squeeze a tennis ball. A faint shimmer of silver pulsed through my skin, and I withdrew my hand. The building was heavily warded against hostile magic. If someone with a lot of juice was to hurl a fireball at it, it'd probably bounce off without so much as scorching the gray walls. I opened one half of the metal doors and walked inside. A narrow passage stretched to the right of me, terminating at the door, boasting a large red-on-white sign, "Authorized personnel only." My other option was a flight of stairs leading upward. I took the stairs, noting that they were surprisingly clean. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody asked why I was there. Look at us. We are helpful and non-threatening. We live to serve the community, and we even let anyone walk into our office. The need for an unassuming building I could understand, but public records claimed that the entire chapter consisted of 9 knights, a protector, a diviner, a quester, 3 defenders, and 3 guardians. 9 people, overseeing the city of Atlanta. Yeah. The stairs ended on a landing with a single metal door painted a dull green. A small dagger gleamed weakly on its surface about my eye level. Knocking didn't seem like a good idea, so I swung the door open and let myself in. A long hallway stretched before me, offering a variety of color to my tired eyes. Gray, and yet more gray. The ultra-short carpet boasted plain gray pile. The walls were painted into 2 shades of gray, lighter on top and a darker gray runner at the bottom. The small warts of electric lights on the ceiling looked gray too. No doubt the decorator chose a particularly dull, smoky glass out of aesthetic considerations. The place looked spotless. Several doors branched from the hallway, probably leading into the individual offices. At the very end, a large wooden door supported a kite shield enameled black. In the middle of the shield reared a steel lion, polished to bright gleam. The Night Protector. Just the fellow I needed to see. I marched through the hallway, aiming for the shield and glancing into the doorways as I passed them. On my left, I saw a small armory. A short, well-muscled man sat on a wooden bench, polishing a DHA. The wide blade of the short Vietnamese sword shimmered slightly as he drew an oiled cloth against this bluish metal. On the right lay a small but immaculate office. A large black man dressed in an expensive suit sat behind the desk, talking on the phone. He saw me, smiled with automatic courtesy, and kept talking. In his place, I wouldn't have given myself a second glance either. I wore my work clothes, jeans loose enough to let me kick a man taller than me in the throat, a green shirt and comfortable running shoes. Slayer rested in the sheath on my back, partially hidden by my jacket. The saber's hilt protruded above my right shoulder, obscured by my hair gathered into a thick plait. The braid was cumbersome. It slapped my back when I ran and made for an excellent hold in a fight. If I were a little less vain, I would have cut it off, but I've already sacrificed feminine clothes, makeup, and pretty underwear in the name of functionality. I'd be damned if I gave up my hair too. I reached the protector's door and raised my hand to knock. "Just a moment, dear," said the female voice I'd heard through the phone yesterday. I glanced in its direction and saw a small office cluttered with filing cabinets. A large desk sat in the middle of the floor, and on top of the desk stood a middle-aged woman. The woman was tall, prim, and very thin, with a halo of curly hair dyed platinum gray. She wore a stylish blue pantsuit. A matching pair of shoes rested near the leg of the chair she must have used to get on the table. "He's with someone, dear," the woman said. She raised her hands and proceeded to change the twisted bulb in a buffet lantern fixed to the ceiling next to the electric light. "You don't have an appointment, do you?" "No, ma'am." "Well, you're in luck. He's free for the morning. Why don't you give me your name and the reason for your visit, and we'll see what we can do." I waited until she finished the phala bulb, told her that I was here in connection with Greg Feldman, and gave her my card. She took it down, showing no reaction at all, and pointed behind me. "There's a waiting area over there, dear." I turned and walked into the waiting area, which turned out to be just another office equipped with black leather sofa and 2 chairs. A table stood against the wall by the door with a coffee pot, guarded by 2 stacks of small clay cups. A large sugar cube stood next to the cups, and my hand twitched to the donuts, but I restrained myself. Anyone who had the pleasure of trying one of the old Scott's donuts quickly learned you couldn't eat just one. Waltzing into the protector's office covered in hand-whipped chocolate cream wasn't a good way to make a right impression. I found a safe spot by the window, away from the donuts, and glanced past the bars to the outside, at the small stretch of the overcast frame. by roofs. The Order of Merciful Aid offered just what its name suggested. Merciful aid to anyone who asked. If you could pay, they would charge you, and if you couldn't, they would kill shit on your behalf pro bono. Officially, their mission statement was to protect humanity against all harm. By magic or by weapon, trouble was their definition of harm seemed rather flexible, and sometimes merciful aid meant they lopped your head off. The Order got away with a lot. Its membership was too powerful to be ignored, and the temptation to rely on it was too great. It's been endorsed by the government as the third part of the law enforcement triumvirate. The Paranormal Activity Police, Division, the Military Supernatural Defense Units, and the Order of the Knights of Merciful Aid were all supposed to play nice together and keep the general public safe. In reality, it didn't exactly happen that way. The Knights of the Order were helpful, competent, and lethal. Unlike the mercenaries of the Guild, they were not motivated by money, and they stood by their promises. But unlike the mercs, they also made judgments, and they believed that they also always knew best. A tall man stepped into the waiting room. The stench hit me almost before I saw him. A sickeningly sweet, lingering odor of rotting garbage. The man wore a sweeping brown trench coat stained with ink and grease spots and smeared with so many varieties of foodstuff and plain trash that he looked like the young Joseph in his coat with many colors. The coat hung open in front to allow a glimpse of an abomination of a shirt. Blue and red with green tartan stripes. His filthy khaki pants were held up by orange suspenders. He wore old steel-toed paratrooper boots and leather gloves with their fingers cut off the first knuckle. On his head sat a felt hat and an old-fashioned fedora, soiled and stained beyond belief. Thick mousy hair dripped in limp strands from under the hat. He saw me and tipped his hat, holding its rim between his index and middle finger the way some people hold cigarettes, and I got a glimpse of his face. Hard lines, 3-day stubble, and pale eyes, quick and cold. There was nothing especially threatening in the way he looked at me, but something behind those eyes made me want to raise my hands in the air and back away slowly until it was safe to run for my life. "Ma'am," he drawled. He scared the shit out of me. I smiled at him. "Good morning." My greeting sounded a lot like, "Nice doggy." I'd have to squeeze past him and get to the door. The receptionist came to my rescue. "You can go in now, dear." The man stepped aside, bowing slightly, and I walked by him. The side of my jacket brushed against his trench coat, probably picking up enough bacteria to knock out a small army, but I'd not pull away. "Nice to meet you," he murmured as I passed him. "Nice to meet you too," I said, and escaped into the protector's office. I found myself in a large room, at least twice the size of the offices I've seen so far. Heavy burgundy draperies covered the windows, letting in just enough light to create a comfortable gloom. A massive desk of polished cherry dominated the room, supporting a cardboard box, a heavy mesquite wood paperweight with a Texas Ranger badge on top, and a pair of brown cowboy boots. The legs and the boots belonged to a thick-shouldered man who leaned back in an oversized black leather chair listening to the phone at his ear. The Night Protector. Well, at that, I still have to make my lunch and shower and get ready. I know, I'm sorry. You're just gonna have to wait until our next meeting. I know, it's always too long. Well, I appreciate you. You are too sweet. Until next time, okay? I hope you're enjoying the book so far. Take care, dear. Bye.